Can you call me to June 10th, 2019?
Woke everybody up.
For the supervisors meeting?
6 hours.
No. I'm talking about fireworks. Discussion on fireworks ordinance.
Do you have anything on this?
Yeah, I can jump in here, Jeff. Yeah. So, I know that there was quite a bit of discussion at the last public meeting regarding this proposed ordinance. So, the ordinance has been tweaked based on the feedback that was received during that discussion. And I know that the members of the board have a copy of this. Some minor revisions were that the permits for display fireworks, a requirement was added that those permits should not be issued to a person under 21 years old. There's also language regarding an exception to the continuance request process, which, and I'm not going to read it, but my understanding is if you were supposed to have your display Friday night and say you got rain, you want to have it the following night instead of going through. There's a formal written process to extend it further days, but if you're going to do it the next night, there's a process here to call someone the next day at the police department in order to explain why they're doing what they're doing and when this is going to happen, so as to avoid something over the course of the weekend when that's the only window to get your display up in the air. There were also additional conditions added to the prohibitions regarding the consumer fireworks, including not to fire them off within 100 feet of any flammable gases or liquids, or within 100 feet of any explosive materials. And then the one that's going to, by design here, create some discussion amongst the board, and I know there'll probably be some other feedback here, is regard to this concept of duration with regard to consumer fireworks. And so there's some suggested language here that provides two options with regard to the duration, one of which being that the use at any particular location shall not exceed a period of 1 hour of duration measured on a cumulative basis in any given 24-hour period. There's a second option that builds in an ability for the user of consumer fireworks to make a request for a longer duration of usage. It almost is a hybrid of the display fireworks requirement that exists. And then we put in an option 3 that's some combination or modification of the above, which you can, there's a wide range of alternatives that could be discussed here, but we're looking for some feedback and some guidance with regard to some of these changes and tweaks that were made. I can tell you that the current ordinance is compliant with the state statute that's out there that I know has already been discussed previously, and that these tweaks to that ordinance are reasonable restrictions on the use of fireworks within Exeter Township.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's nice work. I think the only question is the option 1 or option 2 for the hour versus do you get permission to go beyond the hour?
I like option 2, but I'll defer first to listening.
Yeah, I like option 2. I guess I have some questions about what the objection period would be and what it means and how the fire marshal feels about yielding that. That's really just what stood out to me.
How would that work?
Well, that would have to be worked out as far as the actual day-to-day and what's being considered by the fire marshal and how that process would work. This is just setting the time frames in which this review would occur.
And then the residents have 5 days to comment after that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I like option 2. That's my opinion. I know, Jeff, you like the hour.
I just like to hear the least amount of loud banging noises near my house as possible. That's what I would like to hear. And I'd not like to have debris flying into my yard or on my roof. So I don't know how we achieve that. I guess I like the hour one, but you know.
So the thing is, we're adding this because of an event that happened once and might happen once a year, maybe twice, right? This is not targeted at the people who are already shooting in neighborhoods that they shouldn't.
Well, that you just call the cops on, and then they get arrested for trespassing or damaging someone's property. But when you have a scheduled event with police permits that disrupts an entire neighborhood and generates the most active post in the history of the Exeter Informant, I think that's a little different.
Sounds like a good time.
Vinnie?
I'm not overly opposed to it. I mean, all in all, it goes up to the state mandated this, right? I mean, we can make some adjustments to it, but if you're having a legal thing, I don't see anything wrong with it. I mean, you got the fire marshal and you're not setting off, it's not display fireworks, it's consumer fireworks.
It's the same.
And we're letting the residents know. And
I mean, that's what I said, if you're letting people know and stuff like that, then, you know, maybe they can make it.
Giving them an objection period, I think is fair to the residents.
I mean, we had a dog that she didn't care about loud noises. There was a lot of people, so we gave her a puppy Prozac. And
There's medicine for that. There's medicine for that.
yeah, so.
I'm just curious, we have one which is restrictive, and we have number two, which is the open end.
Or there's a hybrid, we said. There's three.
So pretty high.
There's three options.
It's not that open. I mean, it still requires, it still allows for it to not happen.
Oh, that's true, but in all honesty, it's there for a purpose. And the purpose is to give way to do it. And so, the question that comes in, as a resident, what prevents just carte blanche giving everybody that comes in and wants an extension, just like the school board, they want an extension on raise the school tax, they go to the state says, okay. So, it's there now. What is going to prevent somebody from saying no, one out? That's what I'm interested in. It's there for an out.
That's kind of my thoughts too.
That's the fire marshal.
Like I like fireworks shows. I like the one you do. I like the Reading Phillies. I like the one you guys did for the first half hour. You know, but I just think 3 hours of on and off loud banging noises, again, that generated the most active post in the history of what's basically our town newspaper. I just think it's, yeah, I just think that's excessive and extreme.
Yeah, but that's the difference is we did not give notice, which is, you know, a lesson learned, and we're saying now you would be required to give notice.
Right, but that still doesn't change the frequency of the loud noises
You can
and
object.
the duration.
You can
Right,
object.
you can object.
Yeah. Rick's just putting a lot of work into a 3-hour fireworks show. So now so if X amount of people show up here and object, it's gonna be reduced to an hour? Is that, okay?
It's the discretion of the fire marshal.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's I mean, I think an hour is plenty, but again, do you guys wear ear protection when you do this? I'm just curious.
We use eye protection. My
Okay.
dog comes to every.
Yeah,
event.
no, I know, I mean,
That's
dog, you know, Pavlov proved you can condition dogs, so ours just isn't, yeah. But, no, you don't wear ear stuff? Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Just go out and then like, woods.
I was just saying, you know, could we identify some areas that would be more friendly for longer term
Please.
firework events?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
In all fairness though, that event that you guys had was a different location. It was
It's
supposed to
what?
be at Stonersville. That event was supposed to be at Stonersville.
Well,
Can you
why,
explain?
why wasn't it there then?
Well, he's gonna explain why.
So it was David on 1020 Hartman Road. It was scheduled for Stonersville, literally like a week prior. You know, my brother's uncle's cousin told me we'll get in trouble, and they just canceled on us. So Daniel Boone allowed us to come in and shoot there with much less notification. Now the township.
No, I'm talking about the one at Neversink.
No, that was supposed to be.
I know that was supposed to be.
Yeah, but it wasn't, I mean,
That's because.
I was supposed to,
That's
you
what
know,
he's saying.
make the NFL, but that didn't happen. I mean, you know, I mean, like, that's where it happened in,
So I
around
will say,
residential neighborhoods.
on your defense, you're voting for 24 hours, an hour every 24 hours.
No, I'm voting for
We
just
could-
have
let's
an
say option
hour
one
show.
stated I could shoot every day from 10 to 11 p.m.
If you wanna do that, I encourage you.
I'm just
I don't
saying.
think you'll last long in the world if you do that, but
I'm just,
if you want to,
just
go
saying
ahead.
option
Yeah.
one does say 1 hour every
Yeah,
24 hours.
and I feel like the odds of that happening are less likely than a 3-hour show. So I'll roll my dice with your bets.
Guess you don't know.
I do not think you're gonna set fireworks off every day for an hour. I don't believe you'll do that. But I believe there will be another show at Neversink for 3 hours.
So
And it'll just be super
I do-
annoying to everyone.
I do wanna call back to the 12% luxury tax on fireworks, so the state of Pennsylvania makes 18% tax on consumer fireworks, which goes back to grants for, township, you know, fire, EMS, et cetera, which is really valuable. We as a club also have people who drive from Florida and Connecticut to come to club events to shoot with their friends
No, that's,
legally and
why
safely.
can't you do that in a rural neighborhood though, or a rural area, I mean, like out in the
I
field?
would love
There's
to.
tons of that space
If
in
you can
Exeter.
find me a property owner who
Yeah,
would give
that
me
sounds
permission, then I would love to do that.
Yeah.
So that's something, you know.
Again, I'm not against what you guys do, like, you know, I don't do it, I like fireworks, I just don't like them for 3 hours.
I guess I just don't.
And a lot of other people don't either.
Now, what if the gun range,
My guys.
they can have a tournament, like, there's no restriction on the gun, remember that, when people coming in about the other gun range, I mean, they have tournaments on the weekends and stuff, there's no stipulations on that.
But they don't cause the same amount of disturbance that show caused.
I would
I mean,
disagree. I live a half mile from a gun range, and most nights, Saturdays and Sundays,
Yeah.
they shoot from dusk, or from dawn to dusk.
So Phil, what do you hear? You hear it all night.
Yeah, and it's bang, 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 which is fine, right?
Right.
I'm not here to complain about that. But I understand this was one time, right? If it was every weekend, I totally agree, right? It's like, we're gonna shut down 4th of July. We're not gonna shut down 4th of July, I know it's a 45-minute show. But I think that if they do it one time a year, or maybe 2 times, right? That it's valuable to the township to bring in revenue that we're not going to get. And maybe they'll come here and spend their money. I would love for them to have a hotel to stay in, but we don't have one. But I think they have to be, as township residents, I understand the cost, I didn't live next to it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know if you're on Facebook, you go on the Extra Informant, but.
Oh, I read it, I read it.
There are so many more people that do not agree with your theory, and I respect your opinion, but again, I just think 3 hours is excessive in a residential neighborhood. I think it's too much.
So people commented on, there were 2 posts, and one was very commented on, but then once it was acknowledged that there was a lack of notification, which is again why I'm for option 2, people seemed a little bit more amenable to, okay, we'd be okay with it with notification, which is again why I brought up notification last time.
Yeah, I think Jeff too. You live, you live. Not only do you have the gun range, but a lot of people live by the train track. How many times does that train go by? A lot.
I don't even notice it.
I'm not saying you live by the train track.
Yeah.
Not you per se.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know you're pro fireworks, she's pro fireworks. I mean, everyone's trying to change everyone's mind. I think there was such a public outcry about it. I'm surprised that
Like
we're
Phil
even
said,
still
it's twice a year.
encouraging it to
So,
happen.
so if
Yeah.
we
Well,
could,
we can
if
change
you
the
guys
ordinance.
put your
I don't
forward,
know.
if you could put something out there, right? If we know the event's going to occur, and you put something in the paper and say,
Well,
hey.
we
we're
have to
going
now, yeah, we have
Yeah,
to now. We
and
have
that's,
to, yeah.
I think that's very valuable, and I think residents would be more inclined to say, okay, I can deal with it for 3 hours, one day.
No.
I think some might, but I think a lot still don't wanna feel like they have to leave their house to keep their kids from crying and their dogs from going nuts. Plus, we have vets with PTSD. I think, I don't think you're addressing that. I mean, you guys aren't really thinking about some of the vets who's, loud noise. Hold on, let me finish, Vinnie. I didn't interrupt you. Some of these vets, when they hear those loud noises, it really affects them. And for 3 hours straight, again, I just think it's excessive.
But again, if you're living near a gun range, and you have PTSD, I mean, you should be, like I said, I don't have it, I was served, I don't have it, but I'm saying if I had it, I don't think I would live near a gun range. And, you know, that's what I'm saying.
Gun range isn't what we're debating. We're not talking about people firing guns at a gun range. We're talking about a 3-hour fireworks show.
Right, and it was at a gun range, which I think would be the best place to have it.
See, I disagree. I think out in the field where there's not a lot of houses around. It's not about a gun range, it's about loud fireworks for 3 hours. The gun range has really nothing to do with it. It could have been anywhere, and if it was in around as many houses as it was around, there still would have been a disturbance.
Last question, Keith.
Yeah, you seem to have a slanted interest here.
Yes.
Slightly. And I'm really even surprised you're allowed to speak,
Yeah.
first of all. But
Why?
because she has an interest in this.
So if you're
So you don't want to talk if you haven't
Okay.
understood?
Time out. But I have a question. What is the benefit to the gun club for 3 hours of fireworks?
Well, we did legally rent out the facility, so they received a financial gain.
Who?
The gun
Gun
club.
Gun club rented to them.
The gun club rented to an organization, and that organization, all the people who were there bought food, et cetera, frequented the gun club. So they made revenue off of an event. It's like renting,
If the event was an hour, would the people not have come?
no.
No? What if it was 2 hours?
Would you drive 17 to 21 hours for?
I'm just asking you, you're in the group, I'm trying to find out the threshold. So 3 hours minimum, or they won't come? Okay.
I'm gonna make a motion for option 2 for the fireworks ordinance.
I'll second that. I mean, we gotta do something. I mean, the state's
Any further discussion
mandates
about
out there, and we'll see how it goes. And we get me do it.
Motion would be to authorize the ordinance to include the gun club.
I'll amend my motion to that.
And I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
3 hours?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Vote? You're a no?
I'm waiting for your second one. Nay. I'm a nay.
All those opposed?
Nay.
You're yes. Yes, 4-1. That's discussion on Airbnb ordinance fireworks.
This is me.
So you should be not allowed to vote.
All right, so the next one is about the Airbnb ordinance. And there have been at least one new case here by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, the Slice of Life case, which the way that it comes down is that it allows you to outlaw the exclusive use of properties in a residential district for rentals or Airbnb purposes. We reviewed Exeter's current ordinance, and we are confident that it tracks with the holding of the Supreme Court case in that Exeter can prohibit the exclusive use of properties in a residential zoning district for rentals and Airbnb purposes with no change to the ordinance being required. Now, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court left unanswered the question of whether if someone uses their property for residential purposes sometimes of the year, but then rents it out at other times of the year. So the easy case for what the court held would be someone forms a company, buys a property, and just rents it out all year long, has it up on Airbnb, and that's the sole purpose of it. What becomes more problematic is if Mr. and Mrs. Smith have their house and they live there for 11 months out of the year, and they travel for a month and they say, we're gonna rent the house out for that month. Or we travel from time to time, we're renting out for a week here, a week there, and you start getting into, well, I lived there for 60% of the year, but I rented out for 40% of the year. So that's where the problem comes in at this point. So there's some solutions that could be had here, that if you want to clarify this particular issue, right now, the ordinance states that the term dwelling does not include boarding rooms or lodging houses. But those terms aren't defined, meaning boarding rooms and lodging houses. So you could amend the ordinance in order to define those terms to capture this short-term rental or vacation rental, the Airbnb use. You can also add new terms like short-term rental, tourist home, vacation rental, and clarify that dwelling and family do not include short-term rentals and vacation rentals. These are all just various tweaks that you can do to account for this. You can also have a standalone ordinance that would strictly address short-term rentals. Now that becomes more complicated in that you now need to, extensively regulate that type of usage. But other municipalities have done this, so that is one solution that has been done that's out there. And then you need to consider how you want to limit these rentals in residential areas. So, again, as I brought up earlier, are you comfortable where a person rents their home for 1 or 2 months in the summer? Do you want to limit frequency of the rentals over a month-long period or during the course of the year? I know this explanation makes it sound as if I'm complicating the matter, but that's really the lay of the land of where it is now. That it's, the Supreme Court has settled one of these issues, and there's another technical legal issue about whether if you restrict it and what that means, but that's really not what we're worried about here. What we're worried about is how do we address short-term rentals within the township. So that's where we would be looking for feedback from all of you as to how you would prefer to address this. And I know that, there's been some, ordinances from other municipalities that have addressed this, and they run the gamut. So I'm not gonna go through all of them right now, but we've looked at a number of them, and they really, it really comes down to what you would like to see done, and then we can craft around that.
How is some of them regulated? Like, is there something with Airbnb needs to file with the townships, or for length, or?
Some of them address that through being registered as that property, and I think the problem exists, what a lot of people, or I'd be concerned out if it was next door across the street, is someone that's daily rental rooms, room by room, 6 new cars on the street every day. Reading through what some of the other townships have done, I like, with Lower Makefield, I think it was done. It has to be your primary residence, no rentals for less than a 1-week period, it's only a certain time of the year. Well, you have to obtain a permit for being able to use that, so now you're on record. If there's any complaints, you're in violation and you broke the ordinance.
So if a neighbor sees different cars there every day, they can file a complaint or
Exactly.
is that?
There should not be different cars every day if it's a long-term rental, and the owner has to be there more than 6 months of the year, the primary residence. A couple of them have done that, but we're trying to stop it. You cannot rent out more than 2 different rooms in the house. So, and it has provisions in it, those at least for, if you are there and owner occupied, yes, you can rent out a bedroom, but not more than 2 or whatever while you're there. If you're away on vacation for a month and rent it out, but in either case, you have to register with the township. Reading all the examples, I think that were provided, I thought Lower Makefield
I think that's
did a nice
similar to our demographics.
So I would suggest, maybe sharing that with residents and see if how that goes over. I don't know what anyone else thinks, but some of the other ones I didn't like, they were.
Yeah, I think there's a purpose for, if your house is on the market and with recruiting the field I'm in, people will move here, rent someone's house for 3 or 4 months as they look for their own house. So it's you almost don't want to eliminate that, but I agree with Dave. There shouldn't be a room a night rental type of deal. I'm just curious how intensive it falls back on the township from a labor you know, in money standpoint to regulate, like, okay, we got a call, we have to go look at this house, who does that? Do the police do it? Is a codes thing, like, how much time is this gonna take, you know?
Will.
I'm a
I mean,
big,
if you do nothing, anything can happen.
Yeah, it's a free-for-all. It's a free-for-all, you have to do something.
I'm a big fan of Airbnb, like, we travel, that's how we go, you know, where we go, we take our dog, we take the kids, whatever, it's great. But I can see how in Exeter Township, like, what are people coming for, right? Like, why are people coming for one night? Why are people coming, you know, why does the house have different people every single night of the week? That is a little bit more concerning, so I agree with your,
Yeah.
you know, kind of middle of the ground
So would that,
regulations.
that would also like regulate somebody with, if they live there and they rent it out their bottom, like say had like studio apartments, can they?
Yeah, that one addressed that, so if the owner's living in the house at the same time, and it limited how many cars or people you could have in the house with you, what defines the size of a room, the size of an area, what facilities it has.
Right, plus, you know, I think the owner there, they have a little more accountability than the person there as well.
So Keith, you want to use your comments on the Airbnb?
Can I go up there?
Linda, you spoke already. All right. We don't be here all night.
Keith Fretz, 40 Stephanie Road. The one you're talking about, or the example you're giving about 6 or 7 rooms per occupancy, I live across the street from that one. There are 6, I think it's 6, could be 5, but I think it's 6 rooms in the house that are rented every night. Every night. Now, I don't go down and copy the makes of cards, see how long they're there. In fact, I turn my back because they park on the street and it's so darn narrow that, you know, if a car comes down the road, two of you can't pass with a parked car, so that's another issue. But, you know, I did not buy a house in Kinsey Hill to have a boarding house across the street from me. And that's exactly what this is. Airbnb, by definition, as it started out, was the rental of a room. It's not 6 rooms in a house where they live upstairs. It's not 6 strangers in my neighborhood across the street sitting in their cars at 11:30, 12 o'clock for whatever reason they do that. Kind of like, why are they here in the first place?
Yeah. I don't blame you.
To be truthful, it's not that they've created a lot of noise, but the lack of noise is no excuse for permissive. This is wrong. It really is wrong. How would you like sitting in your living room every night, cars coming and going, strangers? How many of you have video cameras around your house? Why did you do that? Because you didn't want strangers in your neighborhood, did you?
More for when we know an Amazon package gets dropped off.
I am agreeing with you. I mean, I don't know if you've read the one I'm talking about, but it would limit that, it would regulate.
Right. And
I think today, it's a free-for-all. We want to fix that.
yeah, it is a free-for-all. And unfortunately, it's not a free-for-all for the people that are doing it, connecting the revenue and not paying taxes and not being up to code and so on and so forth. It's a nightmare for us, those who live around it, those who have to watch it, those who have to
I
load
think
their guns at home at
they
night
do
because
track
we have 6
taxes.
people.
I have seen reports where, like, Pennsylvania published a report that the taxes, the revenue and the taxes every county in Pennsylvania paid from Airbnb. And then I think Airbnb sends reports in when you register and collect revenue.
Are you
It's all
aware of what's
tracked.
going on? People that are return renters don't go through it.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, if it goes through the Airbnb system, everyone it's tracked.
If it goes through the Airbnb
Exactly.
system. But Airbnb has become so huge and so noted for travelers, and it's an underground Airbnb now where they rent without contacting you.
Yeah, it's like Uber. They drop you off at the bar, and then they say, "Here's my cell. Just text me when you want me to pick you up."
So, you know, myself as a resident, and I know that there are other people in Exeter Township that I don't know that have the extent of what I have across the street from me. But we're dependent upon you to rectify this problem, because this is a problem. It really is.
I think that's what
Thank
we're
you.
doing. I think that's what we're doing. Thank you, sir. Good job.
Not to complicate the matter, but I believe this would also fall under the business privilege tax requirements. So if we're gonna have a registration program, the people who are registering property for this type of use would also have to register with business privilege tax. And they'll get, and we'll follow up with this gentleman's property really this week.
Anything we pass, or anything we consider, there's pre-existing, still anything that's currently done?
Well, the individuals run a business, so that, we have a business privilege, so they're gonna pay that anyway. I think going forward, that's an issue the solicitor would have to deal with, whether or not it's a precondition, pre-existing matter before it, but it's still, a matter that's subject to the business privilege tax.
No, I mean, I think we gotta do something. I mean, because Airbnb exists all, around the world, but some of it is rooms, some of it's houses. I mean, I've done it and rented a house, for 10 people, you have one person there for a long time, none of the neighbors are gonna complain. It's the day in, day out, which we have to
Transient.
address.
Can I make a public comment?
Sure. About Airbnb?
Yeah. Janet Earlbrink, 12 Longview Drive. I also live across the street from an Airbnb. And my complaint is that they shouldn't be allowed in certain zoning districts, no matter what the time limit is. I'm an SR1, and I'm not for that.
But long-term rentals are okay? Then, I mean, if your neighbor or something, I mean, if they were renting for a year-to-year basis.
If someone's renting it out with not for profit, or not through like a transient rental system, yeah, but how can you restrict that?
Well, that's what we're trying to do with an ordinance, I think.
Airbnb doesn't have the limit on,
Oh, but only certain if you look, the way I look at these ordinances, only certain properties on Airbnb would qualify for Exeter Township, like a whole house, with some of the conditions I stated.
I'm just saying that in SR1, which is, I live in a private cul-de-sac, and if you're not used to seeing people, even if they come, and, okay, if that would be the case, I would require parking in the driveway. These people use the basement, so there's no walkway, they're walking through snow. I don't know if there's smoke detectors, they could bring a boat or an RV, there's so many things.
Yeah, I would suggest posting the one for
That's what we're gonna
Lower
do.
Makefield.
So we're gonna
Let
table.
people look at it and then have another
We're
discussion.
gonna post at the next meeting, we're gonna have the options up for the residents, and then let's discuss more at the next meeting. Let's get the feedback from the residents. We'll post something, the administration will post something, and we'll be able to discuss it more as a group.
Because if you don't do anything, you're gonna have no control.
We definitely wanna get it resolved soon, but we definitely wanna make sure we get all the residents' feedback. Any other comments, Vinnie, Aaron?
No.
Sounds like a plan?
Yeah.
We'll talk about it at the next meeting. Next, discussion on the restaurant at Reading Country Club. We talked about this last meeting.
We've reached out to a few vendors, caterers, so we haven't had a whole lot of positive feedback yet. We need another couple weeks before we have something positive come back to the board. But I just put it on the agenda saying we're still working on it.
I think they're digesting it, right? Yep. Looking at the plan, every options. Next, authorize agreement with BSI in the amount of $91,922 for electrical service to repair the influent pump station.
Mr. Chair, this is the final contract to put the pump station back in working order. All the work contracts the board has approved have been on the mechanical side. This will be the electrical side to connect the motors and pumps to the existing network of things, whatever it is. We got two proposals. One was from Peak, High Peak at 96,000, and the other was from BSI at 91,299.22. I'd recommend to go with BSI. Stop by next week.
That would just be not fun. Not fun. I worked enough for plants.
It's gotta be done.
Yes.
Make a motion to authorize the agreement.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Next, new business, authorization to sign lease agreement to replace copiers in the administration and engineering department.
This is the dullest thing in the world, copiers. The township has two primary copiers on this side of the building. One is owned by the township, that's in the one in the engineering office. It's 10 years old. Second copier is in the administrative office. That is a production model, as in prior years, the township had printed its own sewer bills. It's it was bigger than what we need. That lease is due at the end of next month. The staff has reviewed proposals from 3 firms to lease 2 copiers. We're recommending that the board accept the proposal from Fraser for a 60-month lease. It's about $3,100 per year for both copiers. It's about $600 less than we're paying this year. And make my secretary happy.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Next, approve agreement with Brickhouse Environmental, Westchester, PA, in the amount of $30,150 for environmental consulting.
3,000.
That's what I said, right? I'm sorry, $3,000 for environmental consulting services for the Promenade Shopping Center.
Chair, this is a firm that's been retained by the solicitor to do a phase 1 environmental assessment on Promenade Shopping Center. We're asking that the board confirm the agreement.
Now, just confirming, so the agreement about the purchase, 2 weeks
This is-
ago, so if anything comes out of this negative, the environmental study negative,
You have an option to determine what you want to do.
okay, thank you.
Does this need to be, needed to be bid out?
No, it's a professional services.
Okay. Yeah, we gotta do it. Make a motion to approve the agreement.
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Aaron gets a
Second.
second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it.
Give me a minute.
Aaron's second.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, approve resolution authorizing reimbursement of expenses from proceeds of bonds or notes.
Mr. Chair, bond counsel prepared this resolution. It's a technical step that provides the board with an opportunity at a later date. If the board is gonna proceed with the construction of a complex at Promenade Shopping Center, you can adopt a resolution today that will permit you to cover any expenses you incur prior to the issuance of bonds. That means your cost of acquisition, your professional services agreements, you're reserving the right to put them into the bond issue. If you do not adopt the resolution, you are precluded from adding them to the bond issue. This is something bond guys do all the time. So I'd recommend you adopt the resolution. All you're doing is reserving your rights to add it to a bond issue if a bond issue is to be made and you decide to do it at a later date.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Approve final escrow release number 2 in the amount of $28,538.95 for the Storage World Land development.
We received a request from Greenwig Associated Properties, they are the owner and manager of the Exeter Storage World. They're requesting a final release of the remaining balance of the escrow for a total amount of $28,538.95. The site improvements have been completed and were inspected by our office. And based on our review, we are recommending that a release in that amount of $28,538.95 be made to the owners of Storage World, and this would be the final closeout of the escrow account. There's no items that are for offer of dedication to the township, so there's no maintenance bond required.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I gotta say, for a storage facility, it's really nice as far as the looks. I think all the changes that they had to make, well, when they first came in and proposed it and all the changes, I mean, it's nice that they, you know, was it? Yeah, hey, they ran out of rooms.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Department reports, Clarence.
The last couple of weeks, working on, we finished up all the highway mowing, we're just about finished with the state highway mowing. Ponds have been finished. Presently, we're working on the walking trail down at the, along the river. We're also working on the trail to finish the second part at the Lorraine Park. Hopefully in the next couple months we'll have, by the next 2 months we'll have that finished. That would make that a pretty nice walkway over there. And in the next 2 weeks we will be paving out here on DeMoss and Gibraltar Road. Starting milling tomorrow, and next week we'll be paving.
Yeah, I think I saw the code red on that, Lori. Nice job.
And that's pretty much, tennis court. Repairing the tennis court over the rain. People might see that that's closed for the next couple weeks. We have to replace all the poles up there.
Did we ever do anything with the tennis courts at Farming Ridge?
With what?
Wasn't there like tennis courts at Farming Ridge?
Farming Ridge tennis court.
Was that any ever done?
We haven't done anything with it yet.
That's gonna be done this summer.
I just remembered something about it. Like
Mhm.
there was some-
Yeah, that's after the trails are made. That's it.
No, the roads look great.
Thanks.
Chief.
I'm excited to announce the police department will begin applicant testing process. The test date for the written exam and physical agility test will be Saturday, July 27th, 2019 at the Exeter Township High School. The application packet along with medical release forms can be picked up here at the police department during normal business hours. Also, you can download them from the Exeter Township website, and they can be emailed back to the police department. The deadline to submit the application is Friday, July 12th. So if anyone has any family members that might be interested, please make sure you pass on the information, and we look forward to the process.
How many people are you hiring? How many gentlemen are you hiring?
In the 2 to 4 range, yes. You have some retirements coming up.
Are we advertising for that?
Yes, we are.
Will also be, as the board is aware, Omar provides the township with 8 billboard advertisements for a week each during the year. We'll be placing the availability of the test on one or more of the billboards in the next couple weeks.
just an update on the Norfolk Southern Bridge project. Our office did reach out to the Pennsylvania Utility Commission to discuss what our options are once the agreement has expired this June 30th. According to the PUC, Norfolk Southern will be required to apply for a time extension to the decision.
How long is that?
It all depends what they apply for. At that time, the PUC will take action on that time extension, most likely will approve it. However, the township has the right to object towards that time extension or accept it, depending upon what Norfolk Southern's position is and the reasoning why the time extension, reasoning why they're requesting the time extension. If the township decides they're opposed of that time extension, then a court hearing will be scheduled with Pennsylvania Utility Commission, in which the township will need to testify on the reasoning why we are not opposed of having that time extension. At that point, then the Pennsylvania Utility Commission will take action. They are in our favor. They're aware of the situation. I've been in contact with them throughout this process. This has been almost, 3 or 4 years, and they're aware of it, and they would testify on our behalf as well. The only news I could give this evening would be is we just have to wait until that June 30th deadline approaches. At that point, we'll be notified by the PUC of a time extension. Also, if for some reason we don't act within that 20 days and the PUC does grant a time extension, we still have another 20 days to object to that time extension. So we technically have 40 days, but it would be in our best interest that we would act within that 20-day period from June 30th. So, unfortunately, I don't have any better news. They did not hear any responses from Norfolk as well on their status. We're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. I just wanted to keep the board posted on progress or lack of on this project. And one other quick item, we have a current subdivision, Pineview Ridge, that has been dormant, and unfortunately, the developer was no longer involved in the project. However, we've been working with the staff and various potential developers to take over the project. It went out for auction. We do have a person who's interested and purchased it, so hopefully we'll have that project taken care of and completed. It's a small subdivision that's located off of Pineland Road. It's called Pineview Ridge. The original intent was to have the road dedicated to the township. I went out and looked at the site with Clarence, and I both looked at it. Everything's in good condition, so I think we can work with the new developer and have the remaining items that were outlined in the original improvements agreement completed, and hopefully the road will be in a position that we can take it over for offer of dedication. So I just wanted the board to be aware of, at least that's proceeding, and we've had some complaints in the past about the street and plowing operations and so forth. Since it's still private, hopefully the improvements can be completed as they were supposed to be years ago. That's all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Next, Solicitor Report.
No report this evening.
Mr.
Excuse me, report that the board met in executive session prior to the meeting to talk about the J&H litigation matter. That's all.
Mr. Hoover, you're up.
Okay, I have them listed, I don't know, I have them in place. The first one I have there, I'd like an update on the Aetna claim that was turned in. Is there any update on that?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You made a motion? You made a comment at one of the meetings that you had filed a claim in regards to the lost money that we were talking about.
Oh, I see. Well, you have to talk to Sam about that. Sam, he's not here tonight, so
All right,
I'll bring up the next.
I'm satisfied with that, I just wanted to know where we were.
We'll
That
update
was
that on
one.
next meeting.
Pardon?
Next meeting we'll have.
I don't miss, I'll be here. Number two is, what did I give you for number two?
Update on treatment.
Okay, an update on the waste treatment plant on the motors. getting rebuilt?
They're being, they're waiting for one more part to come in. It's being shipped now, and they expect the plant to be operational by the end of July, early part of August.
The only reason I asked, I'm kind of spoiled. Back in 2012, I got in a heated discussion with two previous employees here, and it happened to do with a replacement part. The first time that machine went down, after the dryer was put in place. And my argument was, why didn't they have a part? Because I think there's 5 of these units on that machine. Why wasn't there one on the shelf? Rather than shut that machine down, with the money they can make per day and even save, because they were doing other municipalities' treatment down here.
Right.
Why did they have a told to me that $2,500 on the shelf was a foolish thing to do. And no plans or preparation to go to get a part, which didn't make sense. So from that time on, I used to get a report back in the day from the waste treatment plant as to what they did for that month. I failed to bring one along tonight, but I did that for like 10 years. You know, and then I was shocked at some of the things that went bad, because one of the first things they had on that report was preventative maintenance and all the other sequences of work that they did. So that's the reason I like to stay on top of it. I know it's gone, but it's still important with the kind of money you got invested down there, that we stay on top of it.
At the next meeting, this is a topic that keeps popping up, so I've asked Ed Gillette, he's the principal of the engineering firm managing the wastewater treatment plant. He'll be here, make a brief presentation on what he's found out, and have a conversation with the board and public on the rest of
I
it.
appreciate that, John, and I know there's a lot of work involved in that. Like I said, it's just a shame it went that way. And the last thing was our newsletters.
Friday was mailed, you should have it tomorrow.
I'm sorry, the presentation will be at the July 8th board meeting, not the next meeting, I'm sorry.
I'll be here.
Mailed Friday, mailed out Friday.
Pardon?
Mailed out Friday, you should have it
See, I
tomorrow.
ran into a lot of heat because we failed to get the notice in from the landfill as to the spring cleanups for the big pieces that you get set out for free. I got reminded that they didn't get their notice. And I know the notices were gone
You
there.
post it on the web and Facebook. You don't use them though, right?
No, I don't use it. But the one that were complaining must have not used it either, okay? So you gotta deal both ways, back in the old days
Yep, old
versus
days.
your high tech.
Yep.
Because they don't get it.
No, it's a mixed community, lots of elderly people, lots of young people, lots of millennials, so.
I got a foolish, well, you took care of those questions. I got a foolish question to ask. Why didn't we ever have an impact fee in our township with all the development? I'm only a layperson, I don't have no degrees or anything of that nature. But I can't believe that without an impact fee, that we're stuck paying the bills for all the rich developers that walked away laughing at you. Laughing just the same way you're laughing at me, okay?
I'm not sure if I'm in the position to answer that, but my understanding is the former board years and years and years ago was not interested. And I know we did a presentation to members of the board about doing a traffic impact fee ordinance, but at the time, they weren't interested. But I can't answer what happened before my involvement, but that's.
Yeah, I agree.
I go back many years too before you
That's not
came
the
here.
best I can answer the question. I know I personally was involved in a presentation to do one, but that might have been about 16 or 17 years ago. But prior to that, I can't answer that
And
question.
that would include my attendance time, because like I said, I can't believe that they could walk away like that. Now, we're sitting here and you're smiling, but you're paying for the police, fire,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
and all the rest of that should have been covered,
I agree,
or at least proportion. That's not fair.
I agree.
I agree, doesn't fix it.
We're trying.
But how many people say, I served it, I did the
We're
best
trying
I
to fix a
could.
lot of
Didn't do no bad, huh?
messes. We're trying.
Is it too late for what you have left?
We'll have to look at it.
Looking ain't gonna fix it.
Well, you have to look at it first, then you fix it.
There are 3 types of impact fees: traffic, sewer, and park and recreation. The state reacted to some municipalities being overly aggressive and put in legislation to tell you what to do and how to do it. The traffic impact fee is something I would recommend you not do because you probably spend $100,000 doing a study and not gain any money because of the lack of future development coming down the road. Same with the sewer, you're selling a wastewater treatment plant, so you're not gonna have one. Park and recreation is a little bit different, you have a study done, you have some costs. My experience has been it's much easier to negotiate these things during the land development process. You know what you need. You know that this culvert needs to be replaced, this intersection needs to be improved. If you're developing on 422, as the most recent land development came through for that childcare, you want the right of way, and you want some capital contributions. Someone's gonna do some storm sewer work, you wanna make sure the storm sewer works over capacity for the next guy coming in. You have the ability to negotiate things coming forward because they always wanna have relief from your subdivision ordinance. And you have that ability, and it's much easier to do that in that context than to say, pay me X number of dollars for these improvements based on your traffic generation. You are restricted only to use the money you get from that to do those improvements set forth in the plan. You can't go outside the plan. This way, if you have the ability when someone comes in and has a lot of traffic generation, you can say, all right, here's your traffic, it's additional, or have the impact on the roads, we want you to do this, and contribute money toward our transportation program because it will help you in the long run because we're trying to improve traffic across the board. So it's easier to do it that way than to develop a plan. You know what the problems are. In 422, the most pressing problem is the barrier, but also the interconnectivity of the traffic signals to operate in a better manner, and that's an expensive process. But if somebody's going to develop on 422, that's something we're going to ask them for, and give someone to do that work.
Unfortunately, you have to do a study and identify your deficiencies, and the money has to be used within 5 years. And John's right, on PennDOT Road, I believe you can only use 50% of it. So at the time, I know when we did our presentation, a lot of development was pretty much dwindling down, and most of the improvements would have to be along 422, so you wouldn't be able to use a whole lot of that money that you take from developers. And you do have to identify a service area. Every 10 years, a service area has to be updated and so forth. So it is a lengthy, costly process to do. I know some municipalities have it, but they only have certain areas they can only use for the traffic impact fee, and it has to be in that service area. And with the money you do spend up front, unless you catch it in the beginning of when the development took place in the late 80s, you're probably not really gonna benefit too much.
The other thing about the traffic, you develop a standard of things that are broken, and then that's set aside. You can't collect money to fix those from somebody coming in. You can only collect money from the new improvements required for that development. So if you have a bridge that's currently defective, you can't use money from somebody coming in to fix that bridge. That's the big problem with the traffic impact fee.
John, I respect your expertise, but what I was concerned about is like the services that we had to provide, like the ambulance service, the police department, the fire department, things like that, they go on. You don't have to worry about that road, you gotta pay that.
Well, the developers won't pay for operational expenses. What they will pay is for capital investments. They will pay, I've seen communities negotiate funds from developers to buy a new fire truck. Especially if you have a tall building, you don't have a ladder, they need a ladder because it reflects positively in their fire rates. So they'll provide money for that kind of stuff. What they won't do is give you money to pay for a policeman's salary. No one will ever do that, but they will they will pay for investments in capital things in the community.
Next, Supervisor reports.
Oh, no, I've been nowhere, this gentleman's cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not.
Did you sign up?
No, he came in late.
Okay, you want to say something?
Yes.
Go ahead, you can say. Just give your name and address, please, and then we'll get into supervisor comment. You
what I'm
need, you
saying.
need,
We need your address.
your address, your physical address.
What's that?
Your physical address, please.
Oh, my
Your home
address?
address,
Yes, my address is in St. Lawrence. 3625 Stoner Avenue, St. Lawrence. But I'm just here because I'm a patron of Effie's Charcoal Chef. I'll take just a minute. I need to preface my remarks by saying that I have a doctorate in psychology. And the reason that's important is that a number of patrons of Effie's Charcoal Chef are disabled and elderly. And every parking space for the disabled should be kept because of the number of people that are disabled that frequent Effie's Charcoal Chef. And so having a curb that limits that parking space may not be in the best interest of those people.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Supervisor reports, Jeff?
No.
I don't know.
Just wanted to reference, I believe actually I was at your house, the couple here. I might have been at your house. So, you've lived for 55 years in Exeter, and it's changed a lot, and I can guarantee it, because I live on Perkman Avenue, so, street lights were added. I mean, I remember the one guy I was talking to, he said he used to back his car across the lanes and go. I think Perkman Avenue used to be 2 lanes. So, I think with just putting in the sidewalks and everything, we're just kind of, again, everything's changing, it's gonna change. So, where my house is, I live, my wife has a house laundry, that could easily change to something else, and so could everything else. It's like, just because it's like what it is now, it's not what it's always gonna be. So I guess that's what we're just trying to, not that we're not listening, but we're also just trying to make sure that we're just trying to plan for, it's not, like I said, it's not for me, it's not for my kids, it's for like their kids, So it's easier to do things now while it's under construction than it is, later.
Can I respond?
Yeah, definitely.
We don't have any problem with what's going on.
Sure.
What we have a problem with is that we don't know what's going on. For instance, we own a property that needs a driveway widened, and when curbing and everything is being done, we were told that PennDOT would make this allowance and the driveway would be widened. You're talking about adding trees. We have 3 almost dead ones in our 2 properties, and all we've been trying to find out is who is going to take those down and when.
Right, I think.
We don't have any problem, I mean, we're sorry that we lost our parking lane, but, we can make that adjustment, okay?
Well, no, where do you live at?
3407 Perkiomen.
Well,
And they're looking at them, and each one of those trees they're gonna look at separately, they're not gonna just say they're gonna take them all. But if it's a problem, they're coming down.
Well, let me tell you, I wrote a letter because we seem to need to put these things in writing now, so I finally got myself to do that. But I will tell you that before this project began, we had engaged, and I can show you the contract, for a tree person to come. They were all 3 alive at the time, and they would cut them at 10-foot height, and we'd see if we could nurse them back to health. None is healthy because the macadam and the road have
They're growing over
destroyed
the
their
curb, right?
roots. So they're a mess,
Yes,
okay,
right.
and nobody's gonna put a sidewalk in there with those
Exactly.
roots.
And they're not gonna be able to put their curb in either.
No, I don't think so, but
They
the
gotta
thing is,
come down.
they're an eyesore and a hazard. You're out there in the yard, you don't know if you're gonna get hit with a branch because somebody's, now we don't have active traffic in front of our house, but we have steam shovels and all sorts of equipment that also are tangling with the trees.
Yeah, we'll cut them down, PennDOT doesn't, township will.
Well, what I'm saying is, we're not objecting to the project.
Sure.
We're objecting at some points to the lack of information, and what panicked us was when we heard that this, and I think is what panicked Effie as well. This thing is all set, and we're going, well, what is this thing? Because nobody came and asked us if we needed the driveway widened.
Well, no, that's gonna happen, because I'm in the same scenario with you. I'm gonna have my driveway widened as well, just to have easier access. I fought for the 9-foot shoulder because they were gonna take the shoulder completely. And also, like with Effie and stuff, we definitely wanna work with the businesses. We don't wanna take your parking away. We don't, I mean, I can guarantee that. That's not the goal of what, it's to be an improvement, not to hurt people. That's it for me.
Thanks, Vinnie. Aaron?
Thank you.
Clarence, thank you for mowing the detention ponds, because we have one that backs up against our property and bugs, et cetera, critters. We thank you for that.
Yeah, minimum 3 times a year.
Sounds good. When will we be advertising for the planning commission openings?
I believe it was advertised last week, and we did receive one.
You get one name.
I don't recall
Is it
seeing that.
it's on the web, I believe, right?
It was on the website, it needs to be reshared.
I'm sorry?
I will reshare it.
Okay.
We did get a name though. I think the gentleman
Yeah.
that ran his mouth that we called up on, I think.
Todd, yeah, he said he was gonna send it, he contacted me, I gave him all your emails.
So we're excited.
We have others in this room who are interested, and I don't know if you're
Yeah, send us a letter, email John and myself.
Thank you.
Yeah, just send it, make sure to be with this week.
Okay. And then, after our last meeting about the discussion of fireworks, we were talking to some residents, about the safe use of fireworks. And, you know, our organization would be, or, you know, me personally, we would be more than happy. Unfortunately, it's a little late for the newsletter, but we would be more than happy to do a flyer, a presentation, whatever. There are people in our organization who have done presentations to, fire and police forces, you know, on what to look for, et cetera. So if there's anything we can do to help the community, we're more than happy to.
It's close up to the 4th of July, we could do like a police thing, a combo for state fireworks. We'll do it at Jeff's house.
Hey, rent me an Airbnb and you can come over.
Thanks, I have no other comment. Everybody just thanks for coming. Again, we had a good meeting, everything's on the web, we have things posted. And, want to thank everybody for coming. And our next meeting is June the 24th at 7 p.m. right here. Motion to adjourn, we'll talk after.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, everyone.
Right under